Well, welcome Tiffany and Julia. I'm so excited to have you to kick off the first fireside chat of the day.
Yeah.
How are you feeling today?
Awesome.
Great.
Super excited.
What companies were you advocates for? Do you have one you can think of?
Sometimes this can be a product more than a company.
Right.
I have this blanket that I am in love with and that I think almost everyone on my team has now because I talk about it so much. It's the Pom Pom Sherpa blanket from Pottery Barn. You need this blanket in your life. I am just a fearless advocate for it to the point where I was like, I love this blanket so much. I want it to be my coffin liner. Like that's, that's taking advocacy to the nth degree, I think.
Absolutely.
So, to eternity and beyond.
Yes, absolutely. Julie, how about you? Did anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think I would say Google. Just because not in addition to because I work there, but just like everything that they do, right, is so thoughtful, focused towards community, really making experiences and, like products better, which I love that. So they're very invested in making things better, which is an innovation. So that's why I would think about Google.
Well, it's such a good segue. Why don't you tell us more about your role, your background, and then we'll get more details about you, Tiffany, beyond your personal favorite blankets. And
there's your key takeaway for the day.
Yes, everybody write that down. And then we'll start, just grilling you about customer advisory boards, because I personally have, I have some questions. So, Julie, why don't you tell us about you?
Of course. So, hi everyone. I'm Julie. And I am on the Android Enterprise team at Google. I am on the product marketing team. And the reason I'm here because, customer voice and custom advocacy sits under product marketing. Before Google, I was at Uber for a little bit. And then again, I'm a Zoogler, like a return Googler. So was at Google on the Chrome OS team, did a bunch of Gabs, customer stories on that team. Started my career with brand marketing and then, got into product marketing, really loved it. And since then been doing that. So that's a little bit about me, live in Hoboken, Jersey, and really excited to be here.
Thank you. Love to hear that. And Tiffany, what's your story?
Well, so I'm Tiffany Raymond, Dr. T, as I am known at PayPal, and I lead global customer advocacy at PayPal. I've been there for over 8 years. I love PayPal. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, whether I'm at work or not. It's something I'm very passionate about, and customer advocacy is, of course, we'll delve more into that. Prior to PayPal, I'm a reformed academic, so my background is in academia. So I was used to be a professor, and then I worked for a legal tech startup before coming to fintech. So kind of a diverse background, but that's what makes great teams is diversity of background, and diversity takes a lot of different forms. So that's a little bit about me. In addition, I'm also a yoga teacher, and I'm a theater critic. So if you have needs for those skills, then seek me out, and we can talk about that too.
Perfect. Love to hear it. So to start, since we're focused on customer advisory boards here, for each of you, what's the actual definition of that for you? Because it can mean a lot of different things depending on how different teams define their programming. Sure. So what does that look like at Google? And then we'll go to PayPal.
Sure.
Sounds good. So I think customer advisory boards are really a segue to getting, hearing more from your customer, right? So sometimes it's always looked at okay, this is only for product, but hey, this is for everyone working on that product, right? It's get to know your customer. What do they care about? What are their use cases? What do they like? What do they dislike, right? So I think for us, it's a lot more about just giving product insights because I'm talking more from a product marketing team standpoint, and how do you build those relationships, right? How do you have them perhaps partner with you on a case study, right? Or have them speak in an event, right? So it's a lot more about relationship building than just getting feedback from them, right? And I think the second part and the most important part is what do you have to give them, right? like you're connecting communities, right? Like you're really bringing like-minded people, right? Like just like you guys are doing here, right? Like, where they can share ideas, they can discuss problems, challenges, share their stories, right? So I think it's a two-way street for me.
Yeah, great answer. I think for us, when this session is about, building buy-in and launching CAB specifically. And when we were, first beginning that process, one of the things, we actually had a slide on what is a CAB, what is the purpose, and then what is it not? Because people immediately, when you work with salespeople, they tend to think about everything as an opportunity for a sales pitch. Oh good, we can use this to sell people on our products and solutions. And so we very specifically had, this is not a sales pitch. So I think, what something is not is just as important as, what it is. But on that note, on the sort of what is it, it was really an opportunity to build a community of high-value customers across a variety of verticals. We were very conscious about making our CABs non-competitive so that way, members would feel like they could speak more openly, right? And if you've got a bunch of users who are all, from the same industry, then that can kind of inhibit their sharing sometimes. Given we have a very diverse customer base, we were very mindful about creating a CAB that really spoke to, the breadth of, verticality. So that was really important to us, and really building that network, because those are people who might not already know each other, whereas you might tend to know people who are in your industry already. So as far as what they're getting out of it, it enhances what they're getting out of it, and it enables them to build some bridges. And we've actually seen some of our CAB members form partnerships with each other as a direct result of being in our CAB. So I think that was a really great outcome as far as, something that they get out of it as well.
Brilliant.
Good answer.
And so when you really delineated the design of your CABs, when you drew the line in the sand about what it is and what it's not, what did building buy-in look like for internal stakeholders and your customers? Did you start internally and get everybody to give it a thumbs up? How did it go? Did you have any detractors that were like, absolutely not, Tiffany? I don't see how this is gonna work. But
yeah, everyone just loved it right away. Yeah. End of session. We definitely did a lot of road showing internally. That was a really big part, because ultimately we don't own those merchant relationships. So if we need our merchants as participants in the CAB, then we need the leadership across those merchant bases to really buy in and want to actively participate. So that was a really big piece. And after we launched our first CAB, then when we went to kind of build another one, I think part of me thought, oh, well, great, this will be, rinse and repeat, right? But really, we came up against different objections because the stakeholders were different. We were going outside of the US, and then, there was a little bit more hesitancy. And so we had to sort of overcome objections that were a little bit more regional, and I don't think that was something that I had really anticipated. So I just thought, oh, there's just such amazing buzz from how fantastic this is that everyone's gonna wanna, get on the party train now. But there were still objections to overcome. So we actually had to spend quite a bit of time road showing, and then finding really the right group of people. So I think we all know that can be a challenge.
Right, and just to clarify, so you hold regional CABs, they're in-person events, and how frequently?
They're a mix. They're quarterly, and we do 3 virtual and 1 in person.
Brilliant. And what does that look like for you, Julie?
Yeah, so I think it's, we have it every half right now, and it's across all the 3 regions. So we target North America, EMEA, and like we've also started doing in APAC. But typically, like it's also through verticals, like for healthcare, financial services, for retail, right? So it's also by verticals sometimes, or we split it into enterprise versus SMB. So to make sure the content is relevant and they're getting the best out of it. But you brought up a good point. I think it's the same thing. I think with getting building that buy-in, right? You have to like do some internal education before you even like go full on with this program and like build it and do all, like check off all the best practices. And sometimes, like, some of the challenges, like one thing that I've noticed is like, hey, like, is this part of your OKR, right? If not, like, Tiffany and I were just talking about it today morning. Like, hey, if it's not, like, how do you get people excited, right? Like, how can they also support you with the enthusiasm that you have for them? So Tiffany was sharing that experience, and I thought that's so important, and it's very well. It's across like all the companies, the same thing.
Yeah.
What worked for you to really get other people to light up about the vision of the cabs?
Yeah, I think as Tiffany said, like it's a lot of road showing. Like we put like a strategy deck together. Like, hey, this is what we are doing. This is what we are getting out of it, right? And then I think like product was also like an advocate because hey, we are influencing roadmaps. We are really bringing in new features. So I think that like road showing our program, our strategy, getting like leadership excited about it, and I think that definitely helped, get that like that buy-in. And my previous experience at Uber, like we actually, like we were a small team, like, I was on the Uber Freight side, and we had our actually VP who now acts as a CEO actually come and do like a, vision like a vision session at the cab. So that got like everyone fired up. I'm like, oh yeah, like, the CEO is presenting, like, everyone should go, let's take this seriously. So that helped.
That's great to hear. How did it work for you when you were doing your roadshow? What really resonated with each internal stakeholder you were visiting? Was it built into their OKRs as well?
No, it was not. So it was a lot of, I think just, persistence is really, an underrated superpower. And I always say I'm like the pit bull, like I'm not gonna break skin, but I'm not gonna let go. And so I just kept at it. I had pretty strong executive sponsorship from within my organization, and then trying to spell out a lot of the, it's like the same challenges our salespeople face, right? They're out there talking to merchants, and sometimes they feel like they're, selling vaporware, right? And so it hadn't happened yet. And like any organization, things sort of come and go, and there had been previous iterations of cabs that hadn't worked out for various reasons. So understanding, those previous incarnations and then really understanding why they didn't work out and building those objections, kind of like heading them off at the pass by baking in, sort of, okay, well, we know this didn't work because of this, and so here's how we're gonna solve for that. And one of the actual things that came back was, it was very heavily skewed towards one vertical, which kind of inhibited a lot of conversation. And so that's why we really took a very broad vertical approach, so that way we would keep that conversation very open. So we did some internal digging to find out, what those failure points were, and then really made sure that we addressed those within the roadshow. So at least we could have new failure points.
Love that for you. So it sounds like your priority was to really just focus on building trust with them.
Yeah.
To really understand where trust had broken down in the past, and to figure out how to get them to be advocates, right, for these customer advisory boards. So you had mentioned in the beginning with the vertical challenges and the regional challenges, you came across some roadblocks. Would love to dig deeper into that, or any other like roadblocks or challenges along the way, and how you overcame them.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. When we first launched it, we launched it for North America Enterprise, and then we launched a second one for EMEA for Enterprise as well. And then we thought, oh, this is going great. Let's just keep going. We've got momentum here. And then we decided to do one for partner, and then we also decided to do one for mid-market in North America. And I really expected partner to be the challenging one, because they are kind of, frenemies to some extent. And so that could be a little bit of, inhibit a little bit of that trust from the participants. And then I thought mid-market would just be like, oh, wow, we're hungry for this. This is, going to be great. And we really had a struggle with, finding mid-market merchants who really wanted to be engaged. And so I think that was, it kind of went the inverse of what we expected, which was really interesting. So I think you just have to kind of be, you might have a preconceived notion, but things might turn out different than you anticipated, and that's okay too.
Got it. How about you over at Google?
Yeah, so I think one point to what Tiffany was saying was, how do you get the regional differences? And this was super relevant because we just completed our H2 cabs, and having one is time difference and the languages as well, right? Like, because APAC, we target, different countries like Australia, India, Singapore, and Japan. And like, so then what is the time zone do you keep, right? How do you make sure all the speakers and the product team is there with you, right? And what language do you use, right? So it's, we've been kind of navigating some of those challenges and still really like going through it. There isn't a definite answer. Like, of course, we're trying to see if we do maybe break down those cabs by countries next year, right? Or make it more relevant, like have representation, right? So that's like one thing. And then I think the second challenge that I have faced is sometimes, with cabs, right? Often your teams, product teams, want to get everything, right? Like want to get questions answered, want to show or share like some ideas, but it's never, it's kind of never like a, roadmap, right? And I think that's what is something that is challenging because often customers, are attending, giving 2 hours of their time or like the entire day of their time is because they want to see what you have for them, right? Like, what are you going to give them? That's different, that like they're not going to get it out. You're giving them access to the product team directly of the company, right? So I think sometimes getting that roadmap is a challenge. And, which of course, product is planning and they're not ready. So, that's something we're trying to see how we can improve and share. That's something helpful for customers as well.
That's a great point around the product roadmap and kind of providing visibility, but at what level can be a little bit of a balancing act. So actually last night I had cocktails with one of our cab members, and I was asking him some questions, I guess, just to get his perspective on coming into this session. And he was actually saying those are his favorite parts of the cab is when we are talking about future product related things, because we know we've got a lot of cool stuff coming, but not everyone else knows that, and so it really helps him stay engaged. And he said also plan for what they're going to do next.
For sure.
Which is awesome to hear. Everybody, if we're gonna open the room up, I'm sure other folks have questions about engaging the product team or different objections. So feel free to go ahead and submit to Slido any questions you have. And in the meantime, I'm going to slide in my question. It sounds like through your journey with this, both of you have evolved the program so much, you've learned so much every single time you've had conversations with somebody internally and with customers. So if you had to go back and tell yourself a piece of advice when you were starting the process, or when you were picking back up the process, pivoting it, what would your call out be? The first call out that comes to mind?
I think, in my head, things always happen more quickly than they do in reality. And so, being a little bit more patient with myself, right? And maybe goal setting and really needing to, not just educate people, but re-educate, right? I'm spending all day thinking about this, but not everyone else is. And so, even if you've talked about it once, you need to kind of wrap back around and, continue to re-educate and re-engage and sort of, provide that progress so that you kind of keep that enthusiasm, sort of keep that fire going.
Right, love that. Circle back. Make people excited about it. Love to hear it. How about you? What would you say?
Yeah, I think I feel like one thing that I want to do, like tell yourself or do better. Question back to you.
Oh, wait, say that again?
Do you mean do you want me to tell myself or something that we could do better?
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe words of encouragement you would give yourself or say a shortcut. If you could give yourself a shortcut.
Oh, for sure, yeah. So I think one thing that I feel like has always worked, and I think we should do that more, is doing like a pre-cap survey with the audience. And it's really because, you want to know who you're speaking to, right? Like who said yes, who you're speaking to, what do they care about, what are they looking to hear from you, right? What do they like, what do they don't want, right? So I think, getting that from the audience, even if, like, of course, you have your own plans that you want to test, target, like, showcase, right? But that has helped, like, keeping the content relevant and giving customers, like, a better experience because you're really thinking about them and, like, addressing their challenges or, like, pain points. So I think that's something we want to keep doing it, but, like, I feel like we don't always take it seriously. It's like, oh yeah, we only need, like, a post-CAB survey to get their feedback. But no, hey, like, a pre-CAB survey is also important,
Yeah.
I like that point, although we have a hard time getting people to answer surveys. So
But
maybe
yeah,
we need some,
and
maybe we
that
need some life hacks on that one. So
Right. Yeah, well, that'll come up, no
Yeah.
doubt. That'll come up again today. But I think that's a great call out because it helps keep things smooth and keep people happy when you're able to set expectations, meet expectations, account for that along the way. So we're going to go ahead and open up the questions now.
I guess that's where you find some more of those black op ways to try to get that information. Like my
Yep.
cocktails last night, where
Right.
it was like
Yeah.
talking to him directly about his experience and what he finds of value, because he
Right.
never would have shared all that in a survey. So,
Right.
and a lot of times these people, at least for us, right, we're dealing with C-levels from, very large companies, and they don't necessarily, they're not going to necessarily engage in that
For sure.
format.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Good point.
Meet them where they're at.
Right. So this one, pretty hard hitting, was upvoted the most. Let's talk about measuring the success of a CAB. And a plus one to that too is how you circle back once you have measured the success, right? To hype people up more about the continued program. What does that look like? We'll start with you, Tiffany, and then go to you, Julie.
Yeah, well, we measure across several different factors. One is just engagement, like how many members attended, right? And then how many sessions did we have and how many of them attended all of those sessions. So that's very simplistic. We also look at the sort of, revenue of those merchants who are part of the program year over year. So we also look at retention as well. We look at new product adoption that they've had. And again, are these all because they've been part of CAB? I would love to say yes, of course, gloriously so. But, it is, there's some portion of that I think, you can say is a result of, kind of CAB engagement. And then we also look at other advocacy activities that they participate in, whether that's events, case studies, right? So the program is advocacy. Overall, they're part of a CAB, but that's not the only form that advocacy takes. So that's another benchmark that we look at. And then we also try to sprinkle in a lot of, I like to blend the quantitative and the qualitative. And so we'll put in quotes from, them about, how great this was, how much value they got out of it, that sort of thing as well, to just kind of provide some of that color and texture to the numbers.
Brilliant. How about you?
I have to say a lot of things that Tiffany said, like the engagement part and like, the experience part, right? Like from the post-event survey, but qualitative is often looked at. Like the thing is sometimes it's a lot more product driven, like, hey PM team, did you find this content helpful? Like, did you get the right answers you were looking for? If not, like, what would we do better, right? So it's kind of a post-mortem, and often it's more qualitative beyond like the foundational numbers, like engagement and like case studies and like speaking opportunities that we potentially would get out of that.
I love how you both mentioned, like, in the beginning, you're going around to these internal and external stakeholders to really get them involved. And that comes all the way when you measure success. You're taking into account what both of those, segments needed to get out of it and closing the loop with them. One of the other ones that was really upvoted here is who leads the content for all of these customer advisory boards, especially when so many people are weighing in and involved.
100%.
Go for it, yeah.
So I'm again talking more from product marketing standpoint, but I think the strategy overall is led by product marketing or like the marketing team, but the content is more product. So it is from product, like, hey, roadmaps, questions, and of course, like if you have from a marketing standpoint, let's say if you have something to test, like a value prop or like some data points that you want to test, that's part of marketing. But the majority of the content is from product.
I would say that's not as necessarily the case for us. We have a core steerco for the cab. That core steerco, meets, and then we really, collectively decide on, the content for an individual session. But we have a lot of then contributors who we will bring in. So unlike Julie, I'm, customer advocacy at PayPal is part of the revenue enablement team, and revenue enablement rolls up under customer success. So that's a bit different. So we really have a lot of our stakeholders are, in sales and servicing teams, and then we look around and we sort of say, what kind of content do we want? Often it is product-based as far as the content that we're bringing, but it can be other things as well. It can be marketing or other facets of our business, or sometimes it could be a thought leadership opportunity or something like that.
Yeah,
Sure.
great. We've had so many questions roll in about this, which I love to see. We have time for one more that we'll do, but Tiffany and Julie will be around all day, right? All day?
Oh, yeah.
Feel free to corner them. Corner them and talk about, customer advisory boards, if you're okay. Or sit at a round table. No sweat there.
Absolutely.
So our last question that we have, are any of you measuring leads generated from these customer advisory board discussions? If so, how are you accounting for them? What's the reception to those leads that you've been measuring?
I think,
Great question.
that is a great question. I was kind of saying we look at, additional products that the merchant has integrated. So that's sort of, our cab is all existing merchants. So who are already part of our portfolio. But then obviously we have a variety of different, products and services. So we do look at what additional products and services as part of our measurement. So I don't know if that's a lead specifically or if that's exactly what you meant. But that's, that's how we look at it.
Yeah, for sure. It's not same here. I don't think we have like because measuring leads, it's more like how do we cross-sell, right? Or
Yeah.
like upsell opportunities that can be identified, additional use cases. But like we don't really look at like cabs more from a lead gen perspective,
Right.
since they are mostly like loyal and like,
Yeah.
long-term customers. So yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much for submitting your questions. It's great to hear all of these details and learn from your expertise. And really appreciate the roadshow element that you shared. It sounds like you guys really put in the work there to create such successful customer advisory board programs. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, of course.
Give
Thank you for
everyone
having
a
us.
round of applause.